Welcome to the Nobody Told Me That podcast. My name is Teresa Duncan, and my goal is to share information that you probably weren't thinking about. I love preparing my friends for situations that may come completely out of the blue. I also want to share with you many of the tidbits I picked up over the years. If you absolutely have to tune out before the end of the show, make sure to check out the show notes for more details on today's topics and information about my online class, Dental Insurance Design and Management. And thank you so much for making me a part of your day. This episode is sponsored by Curve Dental Software. At the American Association of Dental Office Management's annual conference, I've had the pleasure of hosting 2 different panel discussions on behalf of Curve Dental, and they were titled Managers, What Would You Do? I had put together a group of managers and or consultants, and they were able to answer a bunch of questions that I had for them, but also audience questions. The sessions were a hit, and next year is already being put into place. And by next year, I mean this year, 2023. I have worked with Curve for a while, and when they mentioned sponsoring the podcast, I thought, sure, why not? Let's give this a shot. I do appreciate their love of office managers and the value that we bring to the table. So check out the show notes for a link to curvedental.com/Duncan to check out the software with a few incentives tossed in. Full disclosure, they are sponsoring the podcast episodes, but I will not receive any kickbacks for your demos or your signups. I just want to bring you information in case you are looking for a change, and Curve Dental has just been a really good thing for a lot of people that I've talked to. So I will pop back in later with more information. For now, on to the show. We're back with another edition of Nobody Told Me That, and I have 2 very dear friends with me. I have Andrew Johnston, who is the co-founder of A Tale of Two Hygienists and a hygienist himself, and he also has a couple other degrees that we'll talk about. He is really well known in the hygiene world and just has a lot of great insights from there. And then my frequent co-host, Kevin Henry. I think a lot of people who listen to this know Kevin, but he is the editor-in-chief, the big cheese, big kahuna over at Dr. Bicuspid. Do you like how I added all those titles to the
that's
business
what
card?
the business card needs to say now. It's just big kahuna. I'll take that. Absolutely.
And his podcast is Dental Assistant Nation. So we'll have all of that in the show notes. But the reason I have these 2 fantastic gentlemen with me is because I want to talk about craziness of 2023 and what we can expect going into 2024. And during the pregame, we had a lot of different topics come up, and I think it might be a little spicy. Andrew, you think we're going to get spicy today?
I don't think I'm known for being a spicy or controversial figure, but you did say some things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So, I mean, it'll be what it's going to be. I just don't want to promise the listeners too much until we've actually talked about it.
So we're going to get to that. We have to hold on to that. We can't lead with that now, right? Like, you guys got to hold on to the spice because we're going to talk about some hygiene stuff, and we will get into that. But, you know, the big topic that has been at a lot of the meetings, they're even having separate meetings about this whole thing, is, you know, something we didn't talk about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, which is artificial intelligence. So AI is like really kind of taken over. Now, clinically, Andrew, you're dealing with it. Administratively, I'm dealing with it. Kevin, you're dealing with it with assistants having to master it. And then also from the writing side, my goodness, right?
Yeah,
like
whole different story there.
Stuff, yeah. So let's start with you, Kevin. What are you seeing from assistants? What are you seeing from the companies? Because you're also talking to the companies who are putting out the technology. I mean, what's going on out there with AI?
You know, one of the biggest and most interesting things I heard at Greater New York, it was a prediction about AI for 2024. And that was that it was going to become a very big part of every dental practice this year. One gentleman referred to it as the Chat GBT moment is coming. And I asked him what that meant. And he said, well, you know, none of us knew what Chat GBT was a year ago. And now all of a sudden it's on all of our lips, and, you know, we are using it. And he feels like that in 2024, AI is going to have that moment that it kind of breaks through, and every dental practice goes, oh, this is how I use it, or, oh, this is the way I get it. And honestly, a lot of team members I talk to are kind of excited about that. They're actually excited about working this into their practice, seeing if it can actually streamline some of the things that they're doing and maybe even help with those hiring shortages we know a lot of dental practices are still dealing with. Can AI be that go-between with an assistant that is no longer there and they're trying to figure out how to fill her shoes? Can AI be that? So there's honestly a lot of positive buzz around it that I'm hearing, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to just jump in and say things, Teresa.
Please,
So I
just
haven't been on your show before, but
How
I'm just going to say
dare
my
you.
opinion. Historically, like 2023 and then 2022 and even before that, I think where we saw AI coming into the clinical space, I think was more administrative, right? So it's chart notes. It's, I think, taking different inputs that we have from our medical dental history or whatever, and then helping us have prompts to look at this, think about this. One of the newer ones, probably in the last couple of years, has been like the second opinion, right? You've heard that kind of term quite a bit of, hey, we're going to review the work that you did. We're going to review your radiographs. We're going to review some of the inputs that you have walked out for like your codes and this and that. And we're going to run it against our AI algorithms. We're going to see if this is like consistent with what it should be based on all of the work that we've done. And if it's not, we're going to say, hey, this might have been perio right here, or hey, this might have been a giant cavity doctor that you missed right here. Consider looking at this again. That's kind of where we were. And I think that a lot of the teams want to embrace it. The hard part is the time, right? This is supposed to be a time saver. It's supposed to be something that is helping us kind of get through our day a little bit quicker. But the learning curve is so steep for some of us non-scientific, non-technical people that it's not really the time saver that I think that we're thinking. And so you're like really in two camps so far with AI.
The whole, when you said time saver, it's supposed to be a time saver. Like I remember listening to one speaker saying that the biggest lie we got fed was that paperless would be truly like, we would never have paper. That was like the biggest lie we've ever been told. And so I feel like it's very similar to what you're saying. Like it's going to save us a lot of time, but if we have to keep retraining people over and over again, maybe that isn't a great savings on time. On the admin side, it's been really wild to go into these Facebook groups and read that people are actually using ChatGPT to write their appeals for insurance, which is, I mean, I love it. I would never have thought that, but I'm loving seeing it. I'm loving the usage of it. Then I'm seeing them, put it to use in marketing, of course, and writing up patient communications and all of that. But then I always worry, is this actually reflective of what we are doing? Like the chart notes, and that on the medical side, there's a lot of stuff going on the medical side with electronic health records, because you can say, here's the condition of the patient. I mean, I was just reading this in a blog article that this doctor can say, here's my patient's condition. They're coming in, generate some chart notes that he hadn't even seen the patient yet. And it generated chart notes that were pretty accurate to what actually happened, because the notes had figured out his style and so long. Like, can we be generating chart notes before we actually see the patient? Like, that doesn't sound right to me.
I think there's got to be a way, though, to put that information into the system, right? Like, hey, go back and read 2 years worth of my chart notes, learn how I do this. And then it probably will learn you and how to write them better. I think one of the major misses that we've done over the last couple of years is we haven't used AI for calibration on a bigger scale, right? So you think about the private practices that are out there, and you have this, we'll go back to the second opinion thing. Like you have this AI that's looking back and seeing if you guys are diagnosing properly or the same. You're one doctor, so what do you care? Like, you can calibrate yourself real quick, you're done. Where it really is helpful is when you have a team of hygienists. You have 4 or 5 hygienists and your perio is all out of whack. You have one hygienist that's doing 50% perio. You have one hygienist that's doing like 10% perio. And I know a lot of that's on the doctor, right? Like blah, blah, blah. They have to diagnose. But still, like, I think that we also influence our doctors quite a bit. So we say, okay, it's not, or it is. And they say, yeah, sure, that's fine. So, but when you're on like maybe a DSO scale, when you have, multiple locations or whatever, this is how you get all of your doctors to be speaking the same language. Yeah. This is how you have all of your front office understand what the back office is doing, and vice versa, is using this technology, but no one's doing it really.
That calibration piece is really interesting, because one of the thoughts that I had when this happened is we would be able to take 2 associates, 2 hygienists, like you were just saying, right? But how do you calibrate between a doctor who has seen so much and can see like decay much faster than this one over here, who's just new and he's starting out, and every little shade might be decay and they're testing it, right? So there is some serious calibration that has to go on. But then to your point, if it's in a DSO setting or a large group setting, it's the quantity is what's going to get that data up to speed. In a small practice, you just don't have that, like a single location doctor using AI for his images or her images. Like, it's measuring up against the other database, which only gets better as more people start using it. So early adopters were really taking a chance, right?
They were
having that database there. And I think it's definitely gotten to a point where I'm super impressed with what I see on these images as a non-clinician, being able to show this to my patients and saying, look at this, like, we're not lying to you. I mean, obviously I don't say that, but it's basically like, we're not lying to you. Like, this tooth is jacked. We need to do something about this.
So. Even the robot thinks so.
Right. Yeah. Right. You see that, you hear that little scream coming from the computer. That's your tooth being read. Right. So Kevin, you look like.
Yeah, well, I hear that from assistants, actually, is that the one thing they're really looking forward to with AI is that it makes their job much easier trying to present why they really need that crown. It takes out a lot of the awkwardness that there has been with an assistant or a team member who maybe isn't the greatest communicator or isn't that confident in himself or herself. And all of a sudden now they've got this to kind of back them up. And if ChatGPT can use those prompts and say, here's what you say about it and here's what you point to. I mean, I think that a lot of assistants, even new ones that are still learning dentistry that are coming in from other industries, they're really excited about that.
I think there's like that application too, where we've had these for years, but like the Casey videos, I think that Patterson did it, right? Yeah. Where if we can get the AI to then just be so automatic that we do one click, walk out of the room, and then they do that presentation about the crown or whatever, using some of the tools we already have, such as like the Casey videos, I think that's kind of where we need to look next, where we're talking about like these time savers. We're talking about, trying to be more like efficient communicators and things like that. If we don't utilize some of the tools we already have, though, to link it back to it, this AI is going to be stuck in place.
Right. Yeah. It's basically just a validator, right? It's not going to help us like discover new frontiers, right? Sorry, Kevin.
But I was just going to ask, is AI going to take the word watch out of our vocabularies? I mean, I really am curious, will this speed along case acceptance? I think that's one thing that I'm really curious to see.
Look, I'm going to be controversial about this. I think the word watch is actually a great word. Are you kidding me? So here's the reason why, though. Maybe before, and because I think that people are just so linear in whether, we're going to watch it get bigger, we're going to watch it. Well, then do we not believe in remineralizing at all? That's such bullcrap. I can say bullcrap, right? This is like, that's not a swear word. Okay, that's like a nice word. Anyways, so these doctors going in, they're talking about this prevention. Hey, by the way, I have these tools for you to succeed. This is the incipient decay that, look, I can put a big old hole in your tooth to put a bigger filling in there. Yeah. Or we can try and remineralize it. There should be watches, but it should be on ones that we're remineralizing and keeping a close eye on. Like that shouldn't be out of our vocabulary.
But that's the ideal, though. But that's the ideal, though. So when I was assisting, watch meant, okay, this one is definitely going to grow into something, but she's all freaked out about this one over here. So let's watch this one for the next one. Yeah. So and now we are able to do the remineralization, the new medicine that what's out, but it's got a dental code. It's a Curadon, I think. It's that's going to be amazing next year because it actually is, going to be able to do that. But we didn't have that 20 years ago. There wasn't remineralization.
That's right.
So watching was really what we could do. But here's the thing with AI, when you see that little dot now, our doctor's going to skip the watch and go straight to, let's get in there. So are we now going to see overutilization or higher utilization of one surface composites and fillings, right? Are we going to see more of that rather than stopping and doing the remineralization? I don't know. It's something to think about, right?
You brought up like a good point about like over dependence on AI though too. Like, are we just going to see this little red dot and just like, okay, we don't need to worry about it because the AI told us we don't need to worry about it. But like,
it's going to happen. Look,
some people are lazy. They're going to let the robot talk and do stuff for them.
They're absolutely going to do it. Look at the medicine side of it. Look at radiology now. They don't do any. I mean, radiologists now, like if you are going to get a chest CT scan, they're going to look at it, but they're not going to make a formal opinion until the AI tells them that they're right on track. And how lazy are you going to get? You're going to get pretty lazy. Yeah. So especially if you didn't grow up in medical school reading the chest x-ray. Like the old school radiologists, the ones that are retiring now, they did nothing but read all these chest x-rays. So they've got 20, 30 years of it. New ones coming up. Are they going to put them in front of old school, like a new hygienist? Are you going to put them in front of films and have them, it's just, I think it is going to be an over dependence. That's how Skynet takes over, you guys. Have you not seen any of the Terminator movies? But, the one fear factor that I see from the admin side, and of course the doctors are nervous about this, is that they think the AI is going to take over from the insurance world. So that, that's my world, is that they think AI is going to be used to deny all the claims, every claim, basically.
That's so interesting.
Well, but I hate to say it, but on the medical side, there's been some lawsuits alleging that. But then when you dig deeper into the numbers of denied pre-authorizations is really not that different than what's being denied. It's just that they did it so quickly. So there's AI involved in it. And you're already hearing like little things about that in the dental field, but I don't think it's as big of a problem as everybody thinks it is, but it's a good boogeyman. And it's what everybody, points to. They get a claim denied. It's not because they had crappy documentation. It's because the AI denied it. Like,
right.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, where's the tooth? That's not even the tooth. Like, so
that's fascinating that you're talking. Kevin and I, when we were in New York, we met up with someone who was talking about using AI to do pre-auths and just like insurance verification, just basic, simple tasks. And then you're talking about this other part of it, like the other half of it. I can imagine at one point, like no one's talking to anybody. They're getting all their verifications. They're doing their pre-auths. Yeah. All of like robots talking to a robot. They're going to accept or deny. Then they're going to go back and forth. They're going to argue with each other. They're going to submit more documentation automatically. Yeah. They're going to have all the arguments for us. It is going to be delightful.
It's going to be awesome. I'll never have to listen to hold music again. I mean, that's the ideal, right?
It is.
Yeah. But we're still a ways away from that. But I'll tell you, the carriers, every one of them that I've talked to has said we need to put our budget for customer service dealing with dental offices has skyrocketed. It's uncontrollable. So now we're even to a point where they don't even let us call in some companies. We have to go to the portal. So if they were to deny all those claims, can you imagine the customer service? So they're not trying to take that genie out of the bottle. Is it going to happen? I don't know. What if we get AI diagnosing one surface composites everywhere? Maybe that is something. So I mean, it's always interesting, the corrections and overcorrections when technology comes into play. So, but do you feel that overall, so Kevin says his constituents, they're more positive. Do you feel like the hygiene world is excited about this? I mean, what about,
I don't think most of the hygiene world knows about it, honestly.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at all the practices that are across the world, I mean, or the United States, I guess, in this particular case, I mean, there's some that are using it, right? There's some that are already kind of like playing around with it, but those are the ones that have always been progressive. Yeah. If your office is kind of already progressive, you might already kind of be okay with it.
Okay.
But the ones that are going to be more, in the rural areas, they're just like, I've seen these same patients for 50 years. Like, I don't need to do anything different. They'll never hear about this. They'll never know this is even happening.
Well, I've even seen the companies are saying now that they can get perio readings using AI. So does that now take the probe away from you all? What does that mean?
That's interesting because I would like to know how they're doing it. I mean, you can easily check bone levels. We've been doing it. One of my DSOs that I worked at before, we were doing bone level checks using essentially a ruler. Like we just click here from the CEJ down to the height of the bone, and we'd measure that spot, and then we'd take that information, we put it somewhere else, and that was 10 years ago. Like that part's not new for computers to have the ability to read that bone loss. And I think that's helpful, right? If you have the ability for AI to look at bone loss, great. I don't know how they would do soft tissue. And I think that's probably where I need more education, because I'm sure there's a way to do it through scanning. I don't know how they would do it.
That's another technology that really has exploded too. So do you find that your hygienists, I mean, are they doing the scanning? Are they happy to put that into the workflow? I mean, how does that disrupt the hygiene appointment?
I don't know. Happy is the right word I would put there. Hey, let's do one more thing. Like, you guys don't have enough to do already. I think the ones that I think that have been the most pleased with it is when it's tied to their compensation, quite frankly. So if you're doing scanning and then you get a percentage of every clear aligner therapy that you guys do in your office, great. If you get it for every night guard or whatever, if there's a reason that you are being compensated for taking that scan, sure. But it's the ones where, and I don't know if there's really any of these offices that are doing it, but it's the ones where they're just like, hey, just go scan just to scan, and we're never going to use that information. That's when they get frustrated. They're like, why are we doing this then?
Yeah.
Well, we need to have the records and we need to do this. It's like, well, if you're not doing anything with them, like make someone else do them.
It's not really standard of care at this point, right? To scan every patient, or do you think that
Standard of
will be
care
at
is
one point?
Standard of care is a weird phrase, right? Because standard of care, like I think that it is the standard of care to do it. I don't think that people are doing the standard of care anymore. I think that you need intraoral scanning. If not intraoral photos, you need intraoral scanning.
Okay. That'll be, yeah, you're right. I can't imagine people being excited about this, but this is something assistants can do, Kevin. Like this is a perfect task for them.
And I think that this is something that every state dental board is going to have to start looking at. What does AI mean for their practice, for the practices in their state? Because they're obviously going to have to expand then what assistants are legally allowed to do in those states to include that. Mm-hmm. So I'm real curious to see what the legal ramifications of all this are moving forward, and how much are the dental boards that sometimes can be very antiquated or stuck in stone. Will they actually progress ahead and accept this? And if not, then the ChatGPT moment honestly isn't going to happen. Because if a doctor says, well, my assistant can't do it, therefore, and the team gets frustrated, then it's just going to sit there like, and be a virtual coat hanger.
It's a great point about scope of practice, because it's like, we won't let a human do this, but we'll let a robot, a sentient being do this. Like that is a very good point that you bring to that. I think that dental boards are going to struggle with definitions.
Well, and I also too think that usually the state board takes action when something comes up a couple times legally, right? So it seems like legal issues is what moves the scope of practice or the State Practice Act along. And like, for example, implants used to be that implants weren't the standard of care for replacing a missing tooth long, long time ago. And then all of a sudden, all these people were getting sued for not recommending implants or placing implants. And suddenly implants became standard of care for replacing a missing tooth. And so is that going to be the way? So Kevin, that's true. You're right. Will the robot dictate standard of care at some point?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you all were talking earlier about the robots talking to each other, and that's where Skynet learned, and that's the scary part right there is, how quickly will they be able to diagnose? And if you're talking about any kind of bleeding or anything else, I mean, how far will this actually advance, and how much will it take off the plate?
It's scary and exciting at the same time, so I'm not quite at the scared part, but it's not going to take much. Because all they need to do is when the computer talks back to me, that's when it's a problem, right? So let's talk about State Practice Act, and let's get into, I don't know if we're going to get spicy, but it's good to disagree amongst friends. Let's talk about workforce. Let's talk about, you even mentioned the compacts that are out there. And I know that for people who don't practice or aren't in states that have these, would you please explain what you mean or what I mean when I say compacts in states that it's an issue?
Sure. So, I mean, the broadest of definitions, and I think there's lots of like sub definitions, but the bigger picture is like, can we get one state and another state to agree that if you're licensed in either one of them, this license is valid here and this license is valid there? It's just an agreement or a compact that they have created between states. And so it could be like a regional thing. It could be, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so Washington, Oregon, Idaho could have a compact amongst themselves. And then by the by, they could just loop in Arkansas for whatever reason that they just agreed to do. Like they could do whatever they want. And I mean, there's several issues with it. But there's also several benefits of it. And I think that I think compacts are a crappy idea. I think they're a really good idea if it's done well, if it's done right. But no one is looking at the bigger picture here. And that's kind of where I go out of my mind speaking about these compacts.
So tell me, well, first of all, let me just make one point. I've never understood, because reciprocity is what it's always been called, like in Virginia, Maryland area, right? So compacts is, that's the word that we should be calling it, because that's what the State Practice Acts call it.
Reciprocity is still the right word,
is
too,
it still in there, too? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can have reciprocity between states and not have a compact, technically.
Oh, so the compact is a legal agreement, is what
it's kind of like a binding.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I've just never understood, like, is it because the dental schools in one state are different than the dental schools in another, and the dentists over here don't trust what hygienists may have learned in this other one? Like, why wouldn't it be a national agreement? And maybe that's where you were going with it. Like, it just never made sense to me to have it be regional, because, like, does that mean then that, like, Washington State's going to look at an Alabama hygienist like, please? Like what goes on there?
Well, this is, I'm going to get like all the bad emails for this. But so here's the problem. No, not every area teaches the same. Okay. So you have CODA, right? CODA has your basic minimum standard of this is what has to be taught in all of the classes. Okay. And this is what we agree to teach. to the level of what you teach, though, beyond that base minimum is different no matter where you go. And so when you look at a particular state, you have to look at their scope of practice. And CODA, again, bare minimum, will have, like, if you have your scope of practice in, we'll take Idaho again, you can do X, Y, and Z as being part of Idaho, like local anesthesia is part of it, or restorative could be part of it, or dental hygiene procedures could be part of it, general supervision, direct supervision, all those supervision laws. That might be different than neighboring Montana, right? So just because you can scale teeth in Idaho doesn't mean you were taught the same as what they were taught in Montana. Maybe Montana didn't teach local anesthesia beyond the base.
Okay.
So why should they have the same license as the people in Idaho?
Okay.
Or for those states, I think Maine, I'm going to get some of these wrong, Oregon, Washington, that have restorative function as part of my basic license. So as a hygienist in Washington, I place restorations. I can't give you that same license to someone in Florida who can't do restorations. You can't, there's no reciprocity there.
So you have that ability, though. You got licensed to do that. That is something that you can do. And you did move down to Florida. And were you like, oh man, I could do this much faster? Like, what happened? That must have killed you.
I would never say that. But no, here's the thing, though. And so in Washington, as part of our just regular curriculum, like, we don't take, I think it's extra classes compared to, again, the schools in other states, but it's still the same number of years that we go to school as everyone else. We don't take a third year or anything like that. We do have to take boards for it, and we have to, like, prove that we have competency there. And then Oregon adopted a lot of things. I think it was like 2011. And so I was able to get licensed and do restorative function in Oregon, right? And then with Florida, I would have to be an expanded functions dental assistant to be able to do the same thing that I have to do in Washington. So I'd have to get a different license. It's all sorts of messed up.
Wow.
But I guess my point, what I was trying to say at the beginning before I went off that rabbit hole as I do, is it wasn't uncommon when I worked in Washington that I'd have an out-of-state doctor come into our clinic, or they're a new grad or whatever. They wouldn't understand the scope of practice. And they were also oftentimes slower and oftentimes not as technical, not as good as a lot of the restorative hygienists who have been doing it for 10 or 15 or 20 years. It's just, they were just more, the hygienists were just more exposed to it than the doctors were.
Sure.
And so having this, like, I guess this idea of, we need to be able to move licenses from one state to another is just so, it doesn't make sense in my head.
What if there were a basic, like, what if there were a basic level where you are, you have the ability to pick up scalers and know what to do with them, take x-rays, go periotherapy, like, that would be like the baseline.
So you'd have to agree across all of the states, like, what exactly does that look like? And also, again, supervision laws, right? Like
that just is monumental. Like, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, forget it. Like, just.
Well, I think it can have, there actually is, I think, a way to do it. And I think it's like a 5-tiered thing. Like, you have, like, the top tier can do, like, dental therapy or whatever. And then the second tier can do this. And then third tier is like local anesthesia, and all the way down to, like, the very, very basic, which I don't know. It's the ones that can't do local anesthesia, that can't do anything without a doctor, present. Like, and then everyone in the top tiers can have reciprocity down. But then if you want your state to get to the next tier, then you have to, like, teach more in your schools and give more, widen that scope of practice.
Well, and to just be real clear to the audience that's listening, the reason why we're talking about this is because, of course, we have a shortage of everything. I mean, we have a shortage of everything in the industry now. Hygienists are leaving the field, assistants are leaving the field. Kevin's, like, freaking out when he found out that, like, what is it? Most of them are aging out. And what was that stat? You're like, I know you like to say it before bed, like, please don't let this be.
I do. It's part of my daily prayers, actually. Yeah. When we're going to lose a third of the current dental assistants within the next 5 years, because basically they're aging out. And so whenever I hear things like this from the assistant point of view, I'm like, states have to do everything they can to keep these men and women engaged and to keep them where they can make the maximum out of the practice. So let
me ask you, Kevin. I had a question for you, man. So here's the thing. This is where we get salty. So you are already seeing a shortage. Why do we want assistants then to be hygienists, to fill that shortage and create even more shortage for assistants?
So I'll be perfectly frank. I don't want assistants to be hygienists. I absolutely don't. I think that we've got to stay in our lanes. And I know that I'm going to get booed and tomatoed for saying that. But I absolutely believe that whenever we're trying to move people around, it's just basically a shell game. Trying to, we're going to fix the hygiene shortage. Well, then you've got a worse assistant shortage. Mm-hmm. So I think that we've got to stop trying to figure out how to give assistants hygienist type of duties, whereas we just need to expand what assistants can do in the practice and make sure that they can actually do the things, and whenever I hear you talking about moving from state to state, I can tell you, dental assistants in Washington and Minnesota can do so many different things. Then they move to other states where they're so restricted. I know of several assistants who left the industry because they moved with their husband somewhere, and all of a sudden they can't be a dental assistant and they're barely allowed to take x-rays somewhere. They gave up because it wasn't something that they were passionate about. They couldn't use their skills in a new state. And so we've got
some of that is ridiculous.
It is, but it happens. Yeah. And so we were asking, how do we keep assistants, or team members? I love that tier idea, and I think it would be fantastic. But our dear friend Tia Hunter lives in St. Louis, right there. Missouri and Illinois are so different with what assistants can do. So if you're a Missouri dental assistant wanting to go to Illinois or vice versa, you've got to make sure you know what those laws are. And it's tough in situations like that.
So Teresa, you were asking about though earlier, like, like you have your basic, like this is where we have. Oregon does have something like that. Just so we are clear, like I want to be fully informative for the audience. Like there are states that do, you're a dental hygienist and that this is what that means. And then you have your local anesthesia endorsement, and then you have a nitrous endorsement, then you have a restorative function endorsement. And then you have like expanded practice. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but where you can go out, into the hills and treat people. Yeah. There is a way to have a base pay plus bonuses, like your basic license and then more. But the problem is like, we'd have to agree with that basic license looks like. And I think when you get into, Kevin was talking about like all the scopes, like what can you do to make someone fulfilled? That just gets kind of crazy. And I don't want to say, and I'm sorry for the assistants that are listening to this, like it's not that I don't want you to be a hygienist. If you want to be a hygienist, right? Like it's more of like don't give you guys more to do than you already have to do.
Right.
Well, and
push you out.
I just would love for the role of assistant to be seen as something other than a stepping stone to another job. Like I think assistants they're so crucial in the office. Yeah. And my hat's off to them. I sucked at it. I was terrible. I respect any assistant that can like go all day and get it done, because I was just awful. But we see that all the time. Well, I'm going to go to work in an office as an assistant and then I'm going to become a hygienist. When I was an assistant and then I moved up, it's like, that seems to be the case. And I'm going, what's wrong with being an assistant? Like there's so much going on there, but they see it as a stepping stone. But our industry sees assistants as replaceable, and that needs to stop. And that's been the problem, is doctors will say, oh, I can find an assistant. I will get another assistant. We'll train them off the street, do that.
Which is so dumb. Like you look at an office, like you could probably survive without a hygienist for a period of time, right? Like, let's be honest about that. We really could. Very hard to survive without an assistant. You would do zero production, first of all, but like everything, like from infection control to just basic data entry, like everything on the gamut, stops without an assistant.
You don't service the compressor, you're dead. Everything goes down, right? So, all the basic skills. Yeah, Kevin.
And my whole drum that I bang is that we've got to make sure that we're not just saying, oh gosh, where are we going to find more dental assistants? It's more about the dental assistants that we have. How do we empower them enough? And you're right. It takes a different mindset, but it also takes it from the dental industry, and I'm going to call out our friends that have those booths at Greater New York and Chicago Midwinter and everywhere else. You can't be looking at a certain color of badge and turn your nose up whenever somebody comes over to learn about a product. You have to embrace them and make them feel like that they matter. And I think that we've still got a long ways to go in that respect.
Funny though, real quick, Andrew, the last time I went to a meeting, it was the ADA, and I remember I was talking to them about the whole badge color thing and all that. He's like, we don't do that. We've been taught not to do that. And I was like, listen, I've been all over. I've been a guest. I've been speaker. I've been assistant, staff. I've been staff. Y'all do it. Stop it. You do it. And honestly, why you're supposed to do it, because you're supposed to go to the moneymaker. That's sales. But just be a little nicer about it, for crying out loud. Yeah. Sorry, Andrew.
Oh, I was just saying, if we're calling people out, let's call the ADA out. Just like let's do it. So you guys are saying like the right thing. Like, we can't just kind of like keep moving these people around as a shell game. We need our organizations, our professional organizations, to advocate for new people coming into the profession from I'm sorry, but other professions. Like we need to steal them from everywhere else and put them into the pipeline. And you do that just by raising awareness. And when was the last time you saw any sort of commercial, whether it's local, national, social media saying, you know what? Dental assisting is a great job. Let's do this. Let's be a dental assistant. Great wages, good hours, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, they just need to
holidays off.
They need to start Operation Poach. Like, just here's where, this, we need to come to art, come over to dentistry. And I mean, look at, what was it? Governor Kristi Noem did that whole thing where come to the Dakotas. Is that what she said? Do you guys remember that?
No
and
clue.
she said, we're hiring dental hygienists. And she actually dressed up as a hygienist to show that we have, don't you guys remember this?
I don't remember this at all.
Maybe I'm a moron that watches commercials. That's the problem. I'll have
Somebody
to find
had
it.
a
But
dream last night, Andrew. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying, she did a whole thing where like South Dakota has tons of jobs. I think it's South Dakota. You should come and work here. And hygienist was one of the jobs. Like, we need a lot of hygienists.
See, I love that.
And I was like, wow, this is amazing. But we don't talk about how fantastic dentistry is. I mean, I do. People think I'm weird. We do. But, there's nobody out there going to a high school class. When's the last time that a high schooler saw a dental office come in and advocate for it? It was when they were in elementary school and the tooth fairy came in to deliver some toothbrushes. Like that. Yeah, that's the last time. But nobody goes to the high schools. Nobody goes to the guidance counselors anymore. I mean, that's just career fairs. When was the last time you were part of a career fair,
Right.
So I agree. I think dentistry kind of gets left behind. And I appreciate that the ADA is trying to do a lot of different initiatives, but I have always felt that workforce is a problem because they're worried about workforce in different rural areas, but now we have workforce issues every area. So, rural areas, but let's just talk about it all over the place. So I would love to see a national campaign, but I'm not going to hold my breath on it. They've got other issues on the table, right? It's going to be grassroots. It's going to be managers going out and recruiting and poaching. That's the only way it's going to happen. And I think a lot of it is we don't have agreement across the board on what these jobs are. So there's would-be dental assistants that maybe aren't going to go into the industry because they think they have to go take these expensive dental assisting schools. And, then there's private dental assisting schools. There's public dental. Like, what are they going to do? And they don't realize, I mean, it's not ideal, but you could learn on the job and then get the training from there. At this point, I used to say I don't really want on-the-job training, even though I did it for so long. I would ideally not want to do on the job. I would want to hire a certified dental assistant. But at this point, we need to get flooded. The field needs to get flooded with dental assistants. So I'm not going to be choosy about that. And I feel like I have come to terms with the admin side of it because if anybody's getting replaced, it's us. And so our managers, we're going to do our best to manage the practices and all of that. But receptionists, I'm not saying that we're going to be getting rid of them immediately, but they're expendable. They're expendable because AI can obviously take care of that. I've already seen it in offices that don't have front desk and all of that. Mm-hmm. So at least going into dentistry, going in as a clinical team member, as a hygienist, as an assistant, it's a little bit more job security than going in as an admin side because we're on the chopping block. And I don't know if I say that too often in classes because, I'm going to get the sad puppy dog eyes. But I mean, I think we all see the writing on the wall that at some point, you have to be amazing at your admin job to move the needle revenue wise to have you in that job. I mean, we're 10 years away from that, maybe 5 years away from that. But you guys at least have some, your constituents have a little bit more job security than mine do.
I mean, and you're right, now more than ever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I'll play devil's advocate with you that you may have job security, but it's still something that those, and I'm just going to call out some of my dental assistants, those that are getting ready to age out, who are like, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to adopt any new technology. I'm not going to train this new person who's coming in, which I've heard a lot about that, very territorial. There's still going to be changes that happen for each profession in the dental practice. And it really is, I think, as we started talking about AI and some of the other things that are coming, we are really getting to the point where you're going to have to adapt. There were years when you could just skate by on what you've done forever and people shrug their shoulders. I think that the way that things are getting ready to ramp up in our industry and the technology that's coming in, I don't think you're going to be able to do that in this next 5 years.
I do think the push towards putting us as part of the bigger machine, the Medicare for all or universal healthcare or whatever. I know there's legislation getting proposed that would mandate dental care for adults all over. It's like our industry is not ready for that at all. at all.
No.
We would turn into some of these other countries that have 8, 10, 12 months, 2-year waiting lists to get their teeth cleaned. And I know some offices, they're already there, where they're already at 9, 10 months for their regular hygiene visits. And that's just not, let's schedule you 6 months out. It's 6 months out and then 6 months after that. And Andrew, are you seeing that lessen up? Are you seeing that, like, is that still an issue for you all?
It's pockets though, which is kind of interesting. I think Florida, where I'm at now, we saw our wait list like go berserk when everyone was trying to like move to the state. Like all of a sudden, like get out of the state, like anyways. So everyone was moving here. So we saw, that big influx. And then, from kind of like, my brother and some of the other dental hygienists that I know, sometimes they'll just have like the end of this year, 2023, like a whole day open. And we're like, what? They'll go to their, I don't know what you guys all call it, but like your quick fill list is what we called it, and try and get patients in, and like no one's coming in. And I don't know if that's just, how the economic, like, tides turn really quickly and people are a little bit concerned and expendable income and the holidays and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the norm to be 9, 10 months out, but you definitely have pockets of people, pockets of offices that are just doing so well.
Yeah. And I do think that when you are in an office that is that busy, it's easy to take your eye off the prize because you're just so busy working, like you're just in the weeds. And then I think it does happen. You wake up one day and all of a sudden, like, you don't have any new patients because you weren't able to get any new patients in for the last 4 months. So now you have no new patients, you have no new treatment to diagnose because all you're seeing is the same patients over and over again. So you don't have anybody new in the pipeline. So I could see that happening for sure. But I am really nervous about the numbers of hygienists that we're just not going to have enough to do all of the cleanings. And I think, or the periodontal therapy, I shouldn't say cleanings. I know I shouldn't say cleanings. But even just to get new people in the door, like, our dentist is going to be doing most of the preventive stuff, just to get it going. I don't know. You don't see a new patient within 2 weeks. You're not going to see them. Like that's tough.
I do see that a lot though. That is a model that has kind of been adopted where, especially the areas where they can't find a hygienist to come work for them, they're just too short in the area, where the doctors are doing that initial therapy, that initial, the treatment plan for them and just doing it themselves. They can't find a temp. They can't find anybody. So like, look, I'm going to lose this because the patient's like mentality, honestly, is they do want a cleaning. People feel good after they get their teeth cleaned. And so that is a service that if you're not providing, they're not going to stick with you.
What about these, I talked to a doctor recently about this, and it's certainly not a new idea, but like, how us chicks, we go get our hair blown out. So dry bar became a big thing where you don't get your hair cut. You just go in and get your hair done. Do you see prophy bars popping up where it's just nothing but cleanings because somebody wants to get their teeth cleaned because the wedding's coming up this weekend and all of that?
I mean, your audience is going to think I'm such a jerk, man.
No, I don't. No.
The term prophy is actually about prevention, right? So it's not a prophy bar. It'd be like a polish bar, right? That'd be.
That actually sounds better, to be honest.
It would be, yeah. But it's also more indicative of like what's actually happening. They're not going to go, because you can technically go subgingival if there's, without attachment loss, without bleeding, with all these things, if there is something that needs to be taken care of subgingivally in a preventive measure for a prophy, right? Like that's the whole point of it. But part of the prophy is the polish. And I think that these people that want their blowout or whatever you called it, they want you're going to need to polish first, but then you're going to do like a boost whitening or whatever whitening, inch-hair whitening. That would be a great business model. The problem that I think would arise is the legality of all of that. Who's diagnosing, to do the polish? Who is making sure that we're not doing any more damage? Because people that are likely to go there aren't just going to be the people that have healthy teeth. It's going to be people that have some fractures and some decay. And what liability are you opening yourself up to if you're polishing and a piece of their tooth pops out of their mouth?
Right.
And there's no dentist on the premises or whatever, like that's.
I think it would have to be dentist owned, but yeah, you're right. The legality, no, there's no state that's going to let a polish bar open up without a dentist in charge. I don't know.
But it's not a bad idea, Kevin. Sorry.
Well, no, you're fine. I'm not sure if Andrew saw the same TV commercial I did while we were in New York. There was a place advertising on one of the local channels we were watching at night that it was basically an all you could do whitening and teeth and cleanings, whitening and cleanings. Come in as much as you want. And I was sitting here going, am I really seeing this?
Wow.
But that was on a New York TV channel that they were advertising that in New York. Yeah. So, and I hadn't told either one of you about that. I need to do a little more research on
Look
that.
at him
Actually,
holding out on us. Uh-oh.
Well, I just wanted to mic drop and then peace out. But
yeah,
I was very curious about that. I was like, wait, really?
So
that's interesting.
Let's look at that though, because we're not going to change dentistry, because what's going to change dentistry is the consumer and what the consumer wants. The consumer is going to go there. We're dealing with a whole different set of consumers. I mean, we all know, like, our age and above, our age and older. I'm 52. Our age and older, we got a lot of dentistry done. So we're going to need to get more dentistry done at some point, because stuff's going to go bad. My son, Kevin, see, God, this is what happens when you spend time with so many people, with him for so long. So Kevin's daughter is younger too, about Noah's age, and they don't have the fillings that most people have, right? So they're not going to need the replacement. So will this younger generation who has pretty healthy teeth, has been going for every 6 months, are they going to want just that, like just an unlimited pass for a year of cleanings? And so that way, before an interview, let me just go in and get a polish before, I mean, honestly, that doesn't sound too bad to me, right? Because it doesn't sound too bad to me. Andrew's going to be like, oh my God, this girl.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's one of those things, like, if you get a note from your doctor that says you're disease free, then you can go to this place. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not like anti this. I think it's a good idea. It's just, we just have to do it the right way. It's just like the whole compact thing. Compacts are a great idea if we do it the right way. If it's structured the right way, that's really protecting the public. Like, that's our biggest mission right now. Is like, we need to make sure that we're not enacting legislation or making up rules that can potentially hurt somebody, even if it's just the one person. And so, like, these dental brothers, okay, like, how would that work exactly? I think there's a way.
I mean, I think my point really was, the reason I brought all that up, honestly, was because the consumer is going to drive what these business models turn into, because it's not just dentists now who have the business models. As you all know, we've got business people coming up with dental business models now.
Oh yeah.
And so if the consumers are saying, I just want to get polished, somebody's going to come up with a way to just give them polishing. It's going to happen. And to your point, we just need to make sure it's done the right way. So Kevin, I'm dying to know who that doctor is. You're going to have to get the memory banks going. And
I know.
I want to check out the website and find out all the fine print on all of
Absolutely.
that. So,
well, and I guess the thing that alarmed me was just the whole, as much whitening as you want. I was just sitting here going, that's an issue, but who knows?
But I don't know. People can get as much whitening as they want from CVS. So,
That's true.
I don't know. I think our consumers are going to drive the bus on this, which is not necessarily a great thing. So let's change lanes a little bit. And it wasn't as spicy as we thought it was going to be. We came out of that all right. Have you considered a software change lately? Maybe 2024 is the year to explore cloud-based software, specifically Curve's all-in-one platform. Software add-ons, they add up. Managing multiple logins can be a drag, and then you have to make sure all your data actually syncs, and it's easily accessible. Curve Hero's treatment planning features combine great visuals with the ability to find insurance coverage and determine patient obligations. Update your treatment plans and watch the changes flow through your financial info. It's super easy to customize, and if it's easy for the patient to understand, then your case acceptance rates go up. Auto posting is finally coming to dentistry. With integrated EFT and ERA auto posting, you won't even need to touch 50 to 70% of your Curve claims. This is actively available in limited release with Medicare Advantage plans in 4 states. The national payer that Curve is working with will continue to roll out to other markets through the end of year 2023 and will be national in January 2024. Imagine eliminating the 5% of human error typically associated with the manual tasks that come with insurance claims, especially the posting. It can be kind of mind-numbing. So if you can eliminate that, that is a beautiful thing.
Allow your team to focus on the revenue generation and customer service that we need to provide to our patients by giving them the tools to make it happen. Imagine not having to worry about server issues and broken software bridges. It's possible with cloud-based software. So check out curvedental.com/Duncan for a demo and pricing specifically for Nobody Told Me That listeners. Once again, I don't get anything for your sign up. I'm just trying to get the best deal for you. So again, curvedental.com/Duncan. And now back to the show.
So let's talk about the dental shows that are out there. And for those listeners that don't necessarily go to a lot of dental shows, don't tune out, because what this means, this conversation is really how we're going to get CE delivered to us, and honestly buying trends in the industry. So Kevin and I talk often, Andrew, about the fact that dental shows were not as amazing as they used to be. And this is way before COVID. This is, 15 years ago. You'd see huge attendance at these big shows. You saw it too. Now, the shows are all struggling. They all admit they're struggling. I think Chicago Midwinter does a really good job. I don't think they're struggling, but most of the big shows are struggling. What can they do differently? How can they get people like us back on there? Have they lost people because there's so much CE other places? And if that's the case, what does that mean for vendors? How do we get knowledge of these new products and hands-on with the new products? So you guys just went to both Greater New York. You were there. Tell me a little bit about the show. Tell me a little bit about the couple shows you've been to in the past year or so, and what do you see for next year?
So the shows that I hit routinely are the big ones, right? So Chicago Midwinter. I'll do RDH Under One Roof. It's a really big one for hygienists, if you haven't heard about that one, which, by the way, sold out this year. So I don't know, when we're talking about things are struggling, like, that one's not. It's the first year in 20 some odd years that it's sold out. And from what I've heard so far, they're already like 200 registrants above this time last year. So like on a good trajectory to sell out again for a second year in a row. The Greater New York is a big one. I do the podcast conferences, of course, as well. Sometimes Hinman, I'll do the Hinman. Yankee I've been to before, but that's not something I've routinely gone to. So when I look at things, it's definitely slowing down. The hard part for me is, like, if I wasn't a podcaster, would I even go to these, even when I first started? Like, the whole reason for me to go to Chicago Midwinter, the very first big conference I ever went to, I think it was 2016. I mean, I did Pacific Northwest Dental Conference, the PNDC, before, but that was whatever. It had nothing to do with CE. It had to do with doing interviews with people. And so when I look at the quality of the CE, it is among the best quality CE that you're ever going to get. But to your point, like, there's so many online platforms that have these exact same speakers giving the CE. So I'm having a hard time really understanding why people are going to these conferences, other than the fact that your buddies are going to be there. Like, we all go also because our buddies are going to be there. We met people in the industry. We're going to go out to dinner and have fun, and we're going to, reminisce, and we're going to talk about, the industry and how it's falling apart and solve the world's problems. Like, that's what we do when we're at these conferences. But what is the everyday hygienist, my group of people, what are they going for? I don't know if I have an answer for you on that one. As far as it's slowing down, like, it has been slowing down year over year, but it's still lively. On Sunday, like, it was busy on Sunday. And so if I'm a vendor, I might not get like 3 days worth of really cool, stuff out of it, but Sunday was a, kick butt day for me as a vendor.
Okay.
Yeah, Teresa's heard my spiel, and that I believe that the RDH Under One Roofs, the ADOM meetings, the Serona Worlds, the specialized ones where you have a reason to be there and you're connected to everybody else who is there through something, we'll keep going, we'll keep growing, we'll keep flourishing. But I think your local state shows where it's just, well, we've got Gordon Christensen coming in and, hey, exhibit hall's open. That doesn't have the panache that it used to, for sure. So I really do think that you're going to see a lot more, like Henry Schein has started its Thrive Live, and trying to be the Serona World of the spring, where, again, you're all connected through Henry Schein products somehow. So I think you're going to see a lot more of those shows take over. I think the Chicago Midwinter is always going to be your northern star whenever it comes to shows. I think we all agree it's a product launch show. It's a party show. It's a good feeling show. But some of the others, I think you walk in and you see that they are really struggling to get people into the exhibit hall. And so I think, do we have 3 days of CE and the exhibit hall only open one day, and you make it almost a scarcity mindset that people want to come in on Monday because they know that's the only day it's open? I think you could start seeing people do that because exhibitors are going to start pulling back. Mm-hmm. If they don't get the ROI, they're definitely going to start pulling back. And we also know that a lot of exhibitors are also being asked to sponsor speakers in addition to having a booth.
Yeah.
And so the expenses are just getting out of control for some of these companies out there. And eventually they're going to put a stop to it and say, we can't afford to do this. It doesn't make sense for our business.
Some of the big ones have put a stop to it. They don't go to these big meetings. And so you're missing, you go look around for their booths and you're like, oh, where's so-and-so? Oh, they don't need to be here. And maybe one of their reps will just walk the floor. And that used to never be the case. Like I remember it was like, who's here and who's got the biggest booth? And then we had double-decker booths at one time. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, they don't need to be here. And it's like, wow, like that was a total mind shift for me because I always thought they made so much money at these shows, not that it was a lost leader to get in touch with their people and put new products out there. It's been amazing, this whole industry, to watch the show up and down of it. So
a couple of different things on that. So one thing that I've noticed for like the podcast, we'll say, we don't do sales, obviously, so it's a different beast. If I'm going to a show with the intention of selling my fluoride varnishes or whatever, probably not going to do that well. But I'm there for awareness. And I still think that there's something about that personable, like you are like a real human being, meeting people. People can see you. They can take pictures of you. We see a huge spike in our podcast after every show.
Oh, good.
I'm assuming that's because our social media was, talking about the show. Other people were talking about us being at the show. And we just had like a little quick spike. Mm-hmm. And then it levels off, whatever. But Kevin, the things that you talked about, the shows that you were saying that all of them that you mentioned, I'm like, those are also, they're unique shows. So you look at the, Greater New York and Hinman, they're all cookie cutters, right? They're all the same show, basically just in a different location at a different time. But like Dance by Sorona World, that is, Tracy, you've been to that one, right?
I actually have never been to that one.
It is like red carpet, like crazy amazing. Mm-hmm. It's just different. Yes, you have CE and I like the way they do their tracks of, here's your education. If you're this person, this is what you're going to get. And they really try and focus on the end user. Mm-hmm. Their exhibit hall is an exhibit hall. It's good, but it's like their people, their stuff, like they're very specific partners. It's not just anybody that can get in the exhibit hall. But then their entertainment, they'll have a comedian. They'll have, it's like Jerry Seinfeld. Like it's not just like some comedian. Jim Gaffigan was there. Yeah. I can't remember, was it Sting that sang this last one? They'll have like some of the biggest names in music as part of this experience. And sure, it's expensive, but you get front row to a concert. Like it's really awesome. RDH Under One Roof. It is so much different than any other dental hygiene specific conference out there because they'll have the happy hours. They have like the events. They'll have the networking stuff. Like they just do it really, really well. And there's a party every night. Who doesn't like a party? Right. So I haven't been to the new Henry Schein, the Thrive Live, whatever. I haven't been to that one yet, but from what I've seen, it's similar where it's like, we're going to have a great time at this show. Like we're going to treat you right as an attendee. We're not just here for CE. And I think that's how you differentiate. If you want to continue to thrive, if you want to continue to thrive and be good at this, you have to find something that other people are not doing in a location and a time that they're not doing it.
So I think the thing that I kept hearing from both of you was experience, that it's got to be an experience, right? So, just having us file into a room and then be shuffled to the exhibit hall, we've done that. And for new people coming into the industry, the way they learn is so different. As a speaker, it's been very hard to cut my classes down from 3 hours to 1 hour. Sometimes I'm lucky and I get a 2-hour spot. I can do that, but I was just talking to an organization that wants me to come down for the day for a 1-hour class. And I was like, this is insane. Like that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Like, can I remote in at this point? So I think the economics of a big show where you want to bring in a lot of speakers for 1-hour spots. How many speakers can you bring in? Just looking at the logistics and the economics of that doesn't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. So I think they have to do something different to attract. So as a speaker being asked to do Dance by Sorona, Kevin, I know who you are. I promise I know who you are. Kevin,
just whatever you call me.
You've spoken at Sorona World, right? So, but part of it was like, I want to speak at Sorona World. Like you wanted to speak there, right? So, so that would be a draw for the speaker as well to go there. But if Joe Blow Dental Society, State of Joe Blow calls me and is like, we're going to have a local cover band, that's going to be your experience. That's not going to be enough to get the quality education there too. So it's got to be experience all around, the speakers, the vendors, the attendees. So
Well, and Andrew talked about the spikes after after shows with social media and everything else. And I think that's the thing. You see this flood of things after Under One Roof or ADOM or Serona World about, oh my God, can you believe I was this close to staying? And there is the FOMO that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, let's be honest, we're not talking about the CE side of things. We're not talking about the exhibit hall here, okay?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
we're really talking about the people want something else.
Yeah.
They want that cool kids club feel to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's tough for the Hinmans, the Yankees, the greater New Yorks that have done it this way forever to turn that ship whenever all these smaller ones have figured out, hey, let's just give them, as Andrew said, a party every night and a reason to be there and something to put up on social.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the future of our CE, a party every night. That seems to be, right?
I mean,
as long as the CE is not like 7 a.m. the next day, I think you're going to be all right.
Listen, there's a lot of CE in Vegas. I'm always surprised how many people go to CE in Vegas and they stay out all night and they shuffle in. My whole front row smells like a tequila bar, but that's okay. They got up early. They came in. It's wild, right? So that is interesting. Thrive is going to be something to watch because it's fairly new. It used to be a different show that they put on. So it is going to be interesting to see if they can kind of duplicate that and get it going. I'd love to see more niche shows. I really would. More focused, like business focused. But there's also these academies that are popped up and also taking away from that CE pie. You've got like Mark Costas and the Bulletproof guys. I mean, they come up with all of these dental, what is it? Scott Loon has his thing. There's all these little 2 to 3 day academies that go on too that give them the real meaty business stuff that doesn't, I hate to say it, the state associations are not known for teaching meaty business stuff. And that's why at my side of the world, we don't get excited about a lot of classes at state associations because our classes are almost an afterthought. Like, okay, we filled up the clinical side. Who can we get that's local to do a class on case presentation? I mean, it's very much an afterthought. And I see it changing in some states, but I don't think enough. So I think that's why ADOM is as popular as it is because it's just for them. So Andrew, we got to get you to that one. Have you been to that one before?
No, I haven't. You were in Orlando, I think a couple years ago. I'm like, I think it's when you won your award. And I was like, man, if I was going to go to one, like that's the one I was going to go to.
It's a party. Well, we're back in Orlando in another, maybe 2 years or so. So we're going to have to get you down there. Actually, you can fly. I mean, I know you fly. So
I do.
You do.
I just got my next level up on United for this next year.
Congratulations.
Well, there you go, see?
My status.
So see, I know this is the stuff where like everybody thinks it's really glamorous to do the speaking job and to be traveling and all this stuff. And then our biggest like excitement is we get a good status. So we don't have to wait in line as
much.
We're
gold status for this next year.
But the rest of it is awful. The views are awful. The views are of parking lots. We don't get any balconies. It's just terrible. So it's not what they think it is. So, all right. So we are at the top of the hour and I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, but I'm going to throw it to you all. Tell them how to find you, absorb more of you, because you guys, you're both like two of my favorite ever. And my audience, you guys, I don't pump people up. I love these dudes. So I want you to follow them and see what they have to offer. And if you see them anywhere, please go and say hi to them. Andrew, how the heck do they find you?
I think I've done a good job in dentistry, like being incognito. You can't find me anywhere. But you can follow the podcast, A Tale of Two Hygienists. It's not just for hygienists. We talk about everything. We have cardiology series, myofunctional therapy, ortho. Like we talk about everything on the podcast. And honestly, Teresa, this is like, we used to do 1 hour podcasts all the time. We're at 30 minutes now. And I'm like, oh, it kind of feels nice to do 1 hour again. This was like really comprehensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can follow me there. I'm not on any of the social medias, so you'll never be able to find me there.
Oh, I'll find you.
Follow the podcast.
If anybody needs to get to him, I can get to him. So Kevin, how do people find you?
Well, Dental System Nation podcast. I mean, we do 15-minute shows every week. Would love to have you as a part of that. Also, drbicuspid.com. As Teresa said, editor-in-chief. Come check out the new Dr. B. We try to be a little salacious and have a little fun, but also educate you along the way as well.
Well, and for those of you that don't know, Kevin and I actually have our own podcast called Chew on This. And you said salacious. So I thought, oh, shoot, I better remind them. So when our podcast is salacious, we talk about the crazier side of dentistry. So I actually was on a very formal call with the ADA, and the person who was in charge of it, Kevin, said, I really love your podcast. It's crazy about that dentist. We were talking about the peeping dentist. It's crazy about that dentist. And I was like, I thought he was talking about nobody told me that. And when he said the crazy dentist, I was like, yes, we're getting into the higher air. This is good.
We all love the train wrecks. Let's be honest. We do.
So, can't stop looking.
I will put all of the links, all the ways to find them in the show notes. I'll also put a link to a recent episode that I did with Andrew at the ADA, where we talked about a very salacious story, a dentist who is doing some funky stuff on social media. And that was kind of fun to talk about. So I will put a link in there if you are wanting some of the salaciousness. So thank you, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and always good to see you.
Great, thanks.
And dear listeners, I am so appreciative of the time you spend with me.
We're all super busy, so thank you for making time for me today. The show notes will have any links that we referenced in the episode. You can also find links for my book, events, and my online insurance course, Dental Insurance Design and Management. I speak often around the country on management and insurance issues. Come hang out with me in one of my classes. I promise you'll laugh and learn.